Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana recently had a hearing on Capitol Hill in the United States Senate, whereby he actually questioned some folks who voluntarily came and testified, allegedly at least, but you're going to hear it yourself, for books that would be in public libraries in public schools, K to 12, okay? In some cases, these books are in public schools and middle school, in some cases, high school. And the question is, who actually determines what your child gets to check out of the library and read? Who gets to decide? Is it the school? Is it by committee? Or is it the parent? Do parents decide? And really, I think this is a huge issue moving into the 2024 election. Glenn Youngkin of the state of Virginia proved this. And moving forward, this will be one of the defining moments of the 2024 election. The left thinks that parents don't have rights, and the right thinks that parents, of course, are in charge of their children, which obviously they are. They're their children. The left, including far left regimes across the planet, intentionally try to disassociate you with your children so that they can brainwash them. This is the oldest trick that the left has been using throughout history, world history. Well, Senator Kennedy takes this on, and he asks some pretty tough questions. And he decides to read explicit, and graphic excerpts from the books themselves in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And he does so in front of some guests. And I believe one of those guests is the Illinois Secretary of State, who I guess is directly involved and in charge of public education in the state of Illinois. And this gentleman's name is Giannoulias, Secretary of State Giannoulias in the state of Illinois. And so you have Senator Kennedy of Louisiana first reading about these books and reading excerpts from them. And then we have some follow-up clips from Senator Kennedy asking various guests who are testifying about these books. First up, Senator Kennedy, here is the clip.
Let's take two books that have been much discussed. The first one is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and I will quote from it. I put some lube on and got him on his knees, and I began to slide into him from behind. I pulled out of him and kissed him while he masturbated. He asked me to turn over while he slipped a condom on himself. This was my ass, and I was struggling to imagine someone inside me. He got on top and slowly inserted himself into me. It was the worst pain I think I have ever felt in my life. Eventually, I felt a mix of pleasure with the pain. Close quote. All Boys Aren't Blue.
A book that is in K-12 libraries in many public schools across America. Here's the next clip, ladies and gentlemen. Listen up.
The second is another much discussed book. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's called Genderqueer. Okay? Let me read an excerpt from that. Quote, I got a new strap-on harness today. I can't wait to put it on you. It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You're going to look so hot. I can't wait to have your cock in my mouth. I'm going to give you the blowjob of your life. Then I want you inside of me. End quote.
So that is the second book, as an excerpt from the second book, two books available in public schools from K to 12 across America. And to be fair, not every public school, but increasingly they're being snuck into the libraries of those schools. Okay. So then United States Senator from Louisiana, Senator Kennedy, asks Illinois Secretary of State Alexis Giannoulias some questions. Now, remember, this Secretary of State of Illinois showed up to testify about why these books are necessary in public schools, mind you, public school libraries. So he's going to try, he's going to try to give the typical BS liberal response, which works in Illinois, of course, among certain circles at least, but not when you're in front of Senator Kennedy, who's a serious senator. Here's this exchange, ladies and gentlemen. Listen up. Here it is.
Mr. Secretary, what are you asking us to do? Are you suggesting that only librarians should decide whether the two books that I just referenced should be available to kids? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay. Tell me what you're saying.
Well, first of all, there's this...
Don't give me a speech. Tell me what you're asking me to do.
With all due respect, Senator, the words you spoke are disturbing, especially coming out of your mouth is very disturbing. But what I would also tell you that we're not advocating for kids to read porn, to Senator Booker's point.
What are you advocating for?
We are advocating for parents, random parents, not to have the ability, under the guise of keeping kids safe, to try and challenge the world view of every single manner on these issues.
You're getting conceptual game.
I'm not getting conceptual.
Well,
I'm saying that...
you are. Yes, you are. Because I want to know what you're recommending. It sounds to me like what some of you are saying, the librarians should decide who gets to see that book.
I'm saying when individual parents are allowed to make a decision of where that line is, and To Kill a Mockingbird, which involves a rape scene, should that book be pulled from our libraries? I think it becomes a slippery slope.
I think you ought to think about it a little bit more before you come here.
I've thought about it, Senator.
If you're going to propose something, you ought to be able, in 30 seconds, to be able to explain what you're asking us to do.
So there you have Senator Kennedy grilling the Secretary of State of Illinois, Giannoulias, concerning Giannoulias's support of having these books in libraries. And to be fair here, Senator Kennedy is not saying that the books ought to be removed from the libraries. This is not what he's saying. He's instead questioning who's in charge of issuing these books to the children and who ultimately decides whether or not a child can check out such a book. Okay? So next, and this is funny, this is ridiculously funny, I'm sorry, it just is. Senator Kennedy questions another individual who's sitting at the table to testify. And this gentleman's name is Cameron, but I think he goes by the term mix, like M-I-X, like he's mixed. I think. I read this, I heard this, kind of hard to tell, but that's the whole point, right? The whole point is to play this game in front of the Senate and create a clown show, because it is a clown show. Not by Senator Kennedy, by the way, but by these leftists who show up and they're advocating for their own personal interests and for their, quite frankly, it's a mental health issue, clearly, when you look at this gentleman, rather than for who's actually in charge. And Senator Kennedy masterfully deals with this individual. Here's the clip. Here it is.
Cameron, tell me what you're proposing.
It's pronounced mix.
Mix? Is that how would you like me to refer to you?
Senator, your definition of sexual is synonymous with LGBTQ identity.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you to tell me you read those two excerpts.
Genderqueer.
Do you think that, are you asking that only librarians and not parents have any say in whether minors can read those books? Is that what you're saying?
Genderqueer has never been in my school library, so it's never been banned.
Well, suppose it was. Should it be up just to the librarian, or should parents have a say?
There should be facilitation of collaboration between students.
Should parents have a say?
Parents should be working with students and educators to be making decisions, because students are...
And who decides ultimately? The librarian, or do you take a vote, or who takes the vote?
book review committees in the community in my school district.
You want a committee to decide?
There are committees.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you, how do we decide whether the two books that I just referenced should be available in the library? What would you, if you were running things, what would you do?
All Boys Aren't Blue, the scene you mentioned, is about sexual abuse.
I know what it's about.
It's not
What
erotic.
would you do in terms of making the books available? Would you say anybody can see them, or they have to be in a special session?
Students who do not read books like All Boys Aren't Blue cannot learn what is appropriate.
I understand that.
They cannot learn.
I understand, but none of you want to answer my question. You come here and you say censorship is bad, and of course it's bad. But the obvious response is, okay, you heard the books we're talking about. Okay, we're not talking about Catcher in the Rye. So tell me what you want, who gets to decide. And all I've heard is the librarians. And parents have nothing to do with it. And if that's your response, what planet did you just parachute in from?
Parents, Senator.
Or what country, more appropriately? This is not China.
So that's exactly right, ladies and gentlemen. In communist and totalitarian societies, the way the government, the totalitarian and communist government, maintains its control of the society is by brainwashing the children. And the way you brainwash children is first and foremost to separate them from the parents so that the parents no longer have decision-making authority over the children's education. And then the next thing that you do is decide, as a totalitarian government, what kind of books the children get to read. And the parents no longer have a say in what the children get to read. So the children are then indoctrinated into the government's philosophy of complete and utter control and of giving absolute obedience to the dear leader and to the government. And that's exactly what these individuals are also advocating. They're saying, this guy Cameron or Mix or Nix, whichever one it was, I'm not quite sure, but the individual who kind of looked like a eunuch, Mr. Nix or Cameron or Mrs. Nix, I'm not sure, was saying that basically books that are put inside of libraries and that children get to check out, or books assigned in the classroom, are decided by book committees or committees. And the parents don't get an opportunity to have their child opt out of any of those books. And that is exactly why Senator Kennedy says, you know, what planet did you parachute in from, or what country? Because literally, this is exactly the way you take control of society. And this is exactly the way you eliminate free thought in a society. And of course, they're going to say, no, you're eliminating free thought because you're not letting these kids read these books. Oh, really? So there's nothing that's age appropriate anymore? Parents aren't in charge anymore? I'm sorry, but they are. I know plenty of parents who won't let their children read certain books that I know I wouldn't have a problem with. I mean, I do indeed, by the way, have a problem with these books in public libraries that are in K-12 education. I do. I think it's wrong. But I do know parents who won't let their children read just about anything. But that is the parent's decision. Okay? It's not my decision. And what we're trying to say here in the public school environment is that parents no longer have any say whatsoever. Okay. So then we have this final clip with Senator Kennedy. It's pretty remarkable. I think this is when he comes back to the Secretary of State of Illinois. We have the final clip here, and here it is.
Parents, Senator, for all due respect, parents absolutely have a say. My parents were immigrants, came to this country. We never checked out books without our parents seeing what books we were reading. They encouraged us to read books.
Mr. Secretary, I understand this is good for your politics back home.
It's got nothing to do with my politics. My bill is passed. My bill is passed.
It has everything to do with your politics.
I'm here to...
But you came here with a problem, and I'm trying to understand the solution, and you don't have one.
We solved the solution.
Other than to tell us that we don't agree with you, we'll be on the wrong side of history.
We solved the problem in Illinois. We fixed it because we
well, there are others you could work on.
Well, that's why I'm here to help.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To help other states make these decisions.
So there you have the Secretary of State saying, we solved this problem already in Illinois. And they haven't. The way they've solved the problem in Illinois is to eliminate the parents from the decision-making process. So you no longer have a choice. And of course, you also don't have a choice of sending your kid to a school that more fits your values. You're stuck in the government-run schools, and then you can't afford, because the taxes are so high in Illinois, to send your kid to a private school. So it just never ends. And then you have, the Secretary of State saying, but we've solved the problem. And Senator Kennedy says, yeah, I think there are a lot of other problems in Illinois that you haven't solved, and you're really focused on this problem. It's just unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. We have this incredible situation in America where an entire party is not listening to the American people. The Democrat Party is not listening to the American people and understanding that public education is so fundamentally broken, and that we need competition in education so that there can be more choices and more availability of parents to fit into and put their children into curriculum that actually fits their values. Makes perfect sense.